I said, I can't do that to the American people. Keep building the wall, right? So we're building the wall, but we're getting it all done. We're going to get rid of catch and release. We're going to get rid of the lottery system. We're going to go eventually, when I get the votes, I need Republicans, we're going to go eventually to a merit-based system of immigration. Merit. You come in on merit. Your senator, Joe Donnelly, voted against enhanced vetting. Think of that. What in the world would anybody be doing voting against enhanced vetting? Why? And he opposed a measure to block illegal immigrants from getting welfare. And now you have places where they want to give College tuition to illegal immigrants, and your own kids can't get it. Your own kids can't get it. Joe Donnelly voted no on tax cuts, no on better health care, and he voted no on canceling job-killing regulations, which may be even more important than those incredible tax cuts. But he voted yes on something that we are systematically taking down. We got rid of the individual mandate. We have great plans coming out. He voted yes for failed Obamacare. And we're doing everything to keep those premiums down. But it's a failed experiment, Obamacare. But wait till you see the plans we have coming out literally over the next 4 weeks. We have great health care plans coming out, but we got rid of the individual mandate. Joe Donnelly will do whatever Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi tell him what to do. They don't ask him. They don't ask him. They tell him. They don't say, will you? They say, Joe, this is the way you're going to vote. Mike Braun will be a great, great representative.
Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson. Tonight, if you've been watching, you know the president is speaking right now in Elkhart, Indiana. We're going to listen in.
Mike Braun will fight for the values that bind us all together as Americans. We support law and order, and we support the heroes in law enforcement. They're great. They're great. And they will tell you, surplus military equipment, right? We have it by the hundreds of millions of dollars, sitting in warehouses, getting old. Some of the best stuff anywhere in the world. And past administrations said, no, we can't give that to law enforcement. Someday somebody's going to explain why, but I sort of get it. But it's not a good reason. It's about a 1% reason. We have a 99%. That equipment is being transferred all over the United States to our police and our law enforcement professionals. And we already have it. The other side said, but it's too good. It's too good. It's already paid for. We defend the Second Amendment. And don't kid yourself, it is under siege. We defend the right to self-defense. Never believe that your Second Amendment is not under siege. We believe that a strong nation must have strong borders. We have pride in our history and respect for our great American flag. beautiful hands on our hearts for the Pledge of Allegiance, right? And we proudly stand, all the time we stand, because we love that sound. We stand for our national anthem at all times. But if we're going to defend our values, we need people in Washington who share our values. Democrats, like Sleepin' Joe, say one thing when they're in Elkhart, and then they go to Washington and vote for the radical, liberal agenda. It never, ever fails. You know, there's about 12 of them. You think you have their vote, and they talk a good game, but they always raise their hand for the radical left of Nancy Pelosi. Always. The Center for Effective Lawmaking named Joe Donnelly the least effective Democrat lawmaker in the United States Senate. I don't know, Mike, but I think that will be a very good phrase to run by. He's never sponsored a bill that has become a law. This November, Indiana will face an important choice. You can send a really incredible swamp person back to the Senate, like Joe Donnelly, or you can send us Republicans like Mike Braun to drain the swamp. Under my administration, we're fighting against the lobbyists, the special interests, and the corrupt Washington politics. After years of rebuilding foreign countries, of which a lot of people partake in the cost of rebuilding those foreign countries, we are finally rebuilding our country. We fight to build their borders, but we don't fight and spend no money to build our borders. Figure that one out. We're fighting, and we're finally putting America first. And remember, the last time I did this, and this started 2.5 years ago when I just started, people were not saying Merry Christmas anymore. The big store chains weren't saying Merry Christmas, Merry Christmas. They weren't doing it. They weren't saying Merry Christmas. Now they're saying Merry Christmas again. To bring back our jobs, we're cracking down on unfair trade. We want trade deals that are fair and, by the way, reciprocal. And we love our farmers. We're taking care of our farmers. And we love our factory workers. We love our workers. For decades, American presidents responded to foreign cheating on trade. Cheating. There's no other word for it. Cheating. They responded with silence. They didn't do anything. They were silent. Silencio. Let's not rock the boat. Oh, that's fine. We have a $100 billion trade deficit with Mexico. Think of it. $100 billion trade deficit a year with Mexico. We have a trade deficit with almost every country in the world. We're changing that around rapidly. We racked up trillions of dollars in trade deficits, also known as losses, while other countries stole our factories, stole our plants, stole our wealth, and stole our jobs. But America's long silence is over. And you see what's happening. Car companies are coming back into the United States. They're moving back in. Chrysler just announced. Japan is building big ones. We're expanding our plants. And I put tariffs on steel, and I put tariffs on aluminum. And United States Steel just announced that they're expanding their factories and they're building plants, and we're going to start making steel and aluminum again. America is respected again. Different ball game. Under my administration, we kept another important promise when we put a great new justice on the United States Supreme Court, Neil Gorsuch. And next week, after the promises of many administrations and presidents, and then they never did it. They campaigned, they promised, they never did it. Next week, we will finally open the American Embassy in Jerusalem. And I put one of my friends as the ambassador to Israel, David Friedman. A good choice is right. One of the great lawyers of our country, made a lot of money as a lawyer. But he loves Israel. He loves the United States, but he loves Israel. And they walked up to my desk about 3 months ago, right after I did it, because I said, let's go, we want to go, we want to build fast. So they walk up to my desk, and they give me this beautiful folder, and I'm supposed to sign. I said, what is this? And I'm half signed. They said, sir, we're building an embassy in Jerusalem, sir. I said, how much? Something other presidents don't ask, but that's okay. They said, I kid you not, they said, sir, $1 billion. I said, $1 billion? You know what $1 billion is? You have a beautiful house. It costs you about $50,000, right, to build. Hopefully it's worth a lot more than that. But that's what it costs. So I said, $1 billion? Yes, sir. We're looking for a site now. We're going to spend a lot of money on a site. Everyone's going to get rich on the embassy. So I called David. I stopped signing, by the way. I had Donald, D-O-N-A-L-D, and then it was like dead ball. And then, I don't know if they still have it, beautiful paper, very official looking. And then, all of a sudden, I stopped, never got to the T. And I started putting X's because I was afraid that somebody could say it was my signature. And I called up our ambassador. And I said, David, this is crazy. I said, we're going to build our embassy in Jerusalem. But they want $1 billion. They're going to look for sites. Don't we have a site? He said, yeah, we have the best site. We already own it. And we have a building on the site. And I could take that building that's on the site, Mr. President, and I could take a corner of that building, a big, beautiful corner, and for $150,000, I can fix it. It'll be so beautiful. The location's better. It's set back, which is good for safety. And I can build it for $150,000. Think of that. Think of that. I said, David, so you're going to renovate the corner of a building it's going to be beautiful. The site is the best site, and we own it. The building is already built, and we can fix it. So think of it. We have government wanting to build $1 billion in a site that would never be as good or as safe, because this is a big site, big setbacks. They want setbacks for safety. Makes sense. So I said, David, you can do that from $1 billion to 150. You know what? Spend $200,000 or $300,000. That's okay too. Now think of it. And the reason I was very cognizant, because I was supposed to cut the ribbon of the new embassy in London. You know that, sir. So we have the best piece of property in all of London. It's our embassy. And someone between the Bush administration and the Obama administration, they say Bush started it, but Obama could have stopped it. But let's say the two administrations, what they did is they said, wow, this is a great piece of property. We've been offered a lot of money, like 200 or 250 million. And what we'll do, because we're such great businessmen, what we're going to do is we're going to sell this best piece of property in London by far. By the way, literally, it's if you know New York, 5th Avenue and 57th Street. Now, I happen to have a building there, so, but that is the best one. The Tiffany location. It's the Tiffany location. It's the best location, and it's a big location, and it's the best embassy location we have in the whole portfolio. But somebody said, what a great deal. We're going to sell that for, I think, $250. So let's say to a wealthy person. And they're going to rip it down. They're going to build a hotel or do something. And we sold this thing for $250. Now, everybody in this room, because you're from Indiana, you understand life. You would say, okay, good. Now you're going to build a new one for $50 million. You're going to have $200 million left over. You're going to have a nice embassy. That's okay. But it didn't work that way in government. So they sold the embassy for like around $250 million. They then went out and bought a terrible piece of land in a lousy location. And they just opened a new embassy in a bad location for $1.2 billion. What a great deal. What a great deal. So 3 months ago, I was supposed to go over to cut the ribbon on the new embassy. But I couldn't do it. I said, I'm not doing it. I won't do it. Does that make sense? I'm not going to do it. So I did. Think of that story. Isn't that a sad story? So much. I could give you 50 of those stories. It's all the same. It's all the same. I could give you so many. But just remember, when you see that embassy, oh, here's the other thing with the embassy. The new embassy, I said, when is it going to be open? They said, anywhere from 5 to 10 years. So I said, unless they give me an extension for the presidency. Which I don't think the fake news media would be too happy about. Wait. Actually, they would be happy. Because when I'm not here, their ratings are going to sink. So they'll probably be very happy. So they said from 5 to 10 years. Now, you know when they say from 5 to 10 years, that means probably 15 or 20 years, right? So we open the embassy next week. 3 months. 3 months. 3 months. Oh, I could tell you so many of those stories, but I won't. I won't tell you anymore. We have to save some. We only have about 1,000 left. Among the many grave national security blunders of the previous administration, one of the world's worst was the disastrous Iran nuclear deal. A deal that would allow Iran to go right to the brink of nuclear weapons and ultimately, very quickly, have a nuclear weapon. And by the way, other countries in the Middle East who do have money, all of a sudden, would be looking all over the place for nuclear weapons. That was going to force a disaster. The deal also gave the regime billions of dollars. How about this? $150 billion. And $1.8 billion in green. $1.8 billion in cash, which would be used to spread bedlam and death and destruction all over the Middle East. They're all over the Middle East. And with all of that being said, who knows? Because we're putting the harshest, strongest, most stringent sanctions on Iran. And I hope to be able to make a deal with them. A good deal, a fair deal, a good deal for them, better for them, better for them. But we cannot allow them to have nuclear weapons. We must be able to go to a site and check that site. We have to be able to go into their military bases to see whether or not they're cheating. Now, of course, we're all sure they're not cheating, but just in case. The Iran deal was one of the most embarrassing agreements the United States has ever entered into. You remember the 10 sailors who were humiliated in front of the world for no reason whatsoever. But once again, Democrat Joe Donnelly served his liberal handlers in Washington, not the great people of Indiana that I know so well. He voted to save the deal 4 times. But we saved the deal no longer. As we discussed another critical element of our national security, to me, probably one of the reasons we're all here in this great victory celebration is border security. We have many things to do, but we have already begun the construction of the wall, and so many other things are following. We will have those borders extremely strong, extremely powerful, and we will have laws that match the border. So if you think about it, the Democrats, they're weak on borders, weak on our military. We have, and the last deal, I had to do it. Our military was depleted. When did we need military more than we need great military right now? We got $700 billion to rebuild our military. It will be stronger than ever before. So the Democrats, they fight against the borders. They fight to raise your taxes. They want to raise your taxes. They fight for all of the things that we don't stand for. And we're going to have a great victory in 18. You watch. We're going to have a great victory. History shows that when you win the presidency, 2 years later, the party, for whatever reason, like 90% of the time, the party that wins the presidency lose it out, it loses on the midterms. And the reason is, I guess they get a little bit complacent. We're not getting complacent, folks. We can't. If we elect more Republicans, we can truly deliver for all of our citizens. We're going to keep the promises anyway, whether we do or whether we don't. I'm going to keep that. We have delivered, and it was said by one of these gentlemen, we have delivered, one of the only times ever, more than we promised. I have delivered more than I promised, if you think about it. We will lift millions of Americans from welfare to work, from dependence to independence, and from poverty to prosperity. We will put new steel into the spine of our country. And by the way, it will now be American-made steel. And we will breathe new hope into our communities. We will do it all with American hands, American grit, and American pride. Loyal citizens like you helped to build this country, and together we are taking back our great and beautiful country, returning power to everyday American people. These are the greatest of all people. In every action, with every decision, we will stand up for America, and we will stand up for the great state of Indiana. This is the state where generations of American patriots and pioneers plowed the fields, carved the wilderness, and worked the factories of the great American Midwest. No place like it. It's the state that gave us Notre Dame football, Hoosier basketball, and the legendary Indy 500. With your help this November, Indiana will inspire our country again. No dream is beyond our reach. Our ancestors braved the oceans. They tamed the frontiers, put down the railroads, those beautiful railroads, built up the highways, and dug out the great Panama Canal. We are the nation that won 2 world wars. And we are the nation that defeated communism and fascism and landed a man on the face of the moon. And always remember, we have picked up in wealth trillions and trillions of dollars for our country since our election, not my election, our election. And our economy, people forget, our economy is almost twice the size of any other economy of any other nation in the world. Remember that. People forget. People forget. People forget. We're not going to let them forget. As long as we are proud of who we are and what we are fighting for, we will never, ever fail. With your help, your voice, and with your vote, we will win. We will achieve victory for our country, victory for our children, and victory for this magnificent land that we all love, because we are Americans and our hearts bleed red, white, and blue. We will never give in. We will never, ever give up. And we will never stop fighting for our country, our freedom, and our flag. We are one people, we are one family, and we are one nation under God. And together we will make America wealthy again. We will make America strong again. We will make America safe again. And we will make America great again. Thank you, Indiana. We love you. Thank you. God bless you. Thank you.
President Trump, of course, speaking at a rally at Elkhart, Indiana, went for a little over an hour. Author and columnist Mark Stein watched the whole thing and joins us now with reaction. What'd you think, Mark?
I think it was pretty darn good. The president has essentially invented a kind of new form here, the way FDR did with his fireside chats on the radio, and it works for him. This is how I first saw him on stage, basically riffing on the day's news. He's got a little bit more teleprompted since then, but actually he's gone back to what he was doing in his campaign days. Just he's comfortable in the job, he's comfortable with himself, and he's doing all Republicans and all conservatives a service. And this is something that Marco and Jeb and John Kasich and all the rest can learn from him, is he's not being boxed in by Democrat media corsets of discourse. He's basically found a way to get out what he wants to get out, and it works for him really well. And by the way, the stuff about the London embassy was a classic. I don't believe that was on the prompter, and it was a classic riff concluding. I want to make sure I get these words right. He described the U.S. Embassy in Grosvenor Square as, quote, the best location in the whole portfolio. I love the way he talks about United States embassies as a portfolio, like Trump Tower and Trump Resort and all the rest of it.
Yeah, the State Department doesn't use that officially, but it's a great way to talk about it. I get the sense, watching him speak and talking to him and the people who work for him, that he gets a lot out of these because it helps him gauge the interest level in certain policies.
Yes, I think that's true. It was interesting to me. The biggest applause is always for the wall. And if you notice, the last time he did one of these, a couple of weeks ago, he started to go on, I think it was about H-1B or H-2B visas. I think, in fact, he got a little confused on the point. And the crowd actually wasn't so enthused about that. And I noticed that those lines have gone missing. And, you know, this is really what the media in particular don't get about President Trump. They're very hung up on literalism. He's actually playing, in a sense, he's playing a stage character. So when they get annoyed about things, I mean, for example, he said tonight, oh, Mike Pence, he's doing an unbelievable job, which kind of reminded me about what Chuck Schumer got mad at him for saying about Kim Jong-un. And I can well imagine that in Singapore, Trump's putting his arm around him and saying, hey, Rocket Man, you're doing an unbelievable job. You look fabulous. Lose some weight. You're looking like Macron. It's terrific. What they don't understand is like, you know, the media are bone-crushingly literal about this. He's like a great actor or a great singer. He's playing the subtext, not just merely the dialogue on the surface. And you'd think these moronic celebrity critics of his would figure that out. Why is Alec Baldwin's impersonation of Trump such a big nothing? It's because Trump is actually playing Trump better than this brilliant actor plays him. He's playing the subtext. And that's, by the way, that's what, not to go all actor studio on you, Tucker, that's what Alec Baldwin... That's what Alec Baldwin does when he does his hilarious Tony Bennett impression. He's playing the subtext. But he can't get beyond the politics, and he can't get beyond the surface lingo when he does Trump. Trump is a genius like this, and that's what all these crowds get. Even when the words appear to be saying something else, they get what he's really saying. This is something, you know, if there was political staff college, they'd be teaching these things in 20 or 50 years.
I think maybe what he's saying most of all is, I care about you. I'm interested in what you have to say, and that people want to hear that more than anything.
Absolutely. And what's interesting to me is when you leave these rallies, it's not just that people are laughing and people are mouthing along with the slogans, but you also see people with tears welling up in their eyes, because it is so unlike the synthetic, consultant-driven, poll-tested, phony baloney of conventional presidential campaigning.
Interesting. Mark Stein, always great to see you. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Tucker.
Democrats are upset about speeches like that and about the Trump presidency itself, of course, but for more than a year they've consoled themselves by looking ahead to the midterms, the 2018 congressional elections, and they thought to themselves, we're going to win big, we're going to take back power, and they may. But recent polls show that Democrats' once massive lead is shrinking, and now to almost nothing. A new poll over at CNN shows that Democrats have only a 3-point advantage on a generic congressional ballot. Is this real? What does it mean? What is going on here? Tom Bevan, co-founder of Real Clear Politics, follows this stuff carefully for a living, and he joins us tonight. So what is this about, Tom, and is it real?
Oh, I definitely think it's real, Tucker. You go back and look in mid-December, the Democratic lead in the generic ballot, and that's the question. If the election were held today, would you vote for the Republican or Democrat? Democrats had a 13-point lead. As of today, it's down to 6 in our Real Clear Politics average. And as you mentioned, the CNN poll went from 16-point lead for Democrats 2 months ago down to 3. We've got another poll showing it down to 1 point. So this is real. And it is, just as a point of reference, in 2006, when Democrats won 30 seats, they finished with a 7.9% lead in the generic ballot. And so they're at 6 now, and they need about 24 seats. So I think they're in that range where it's making them very, very nervous.
So Republicans in Congress have been assuming for months, I've talked to them, that they're going to lose big and that Nancy Pelosi or whomever is going to be the speaker. Now they think they've got a shot, but they're concerned about intensity. Voter intensity on the left is really, really strong. How meaningful is that intensity?
Oh, it's meaningful, particularly in a midterm election where it's all about turning out the base. And Democrats have had advantage in that. But again, back to that CNN poll, that was another finding that I think was disturbing for Democrats. They showed that Republican intensity is up now and was matching the level at Democrats. And if that's the case, it's not at all a sure bet that Democrats would take back the House in November.
This is all a little confusing, and Trump's personal approval numbers are confusing, given that the Stormy Daniels story, which is the single most important story ever covered by the American news media, I think we both agree on that, has dominated the coverage for the past 3 or 4 weeks, month, 2 months, I don't know how long it's been. That hasn't had an effect.
No, in fact, it's just the opposite, Tucker. Back in mid-December was Trump's low point in the Real Clear Politics job approval rating. His average was 37. He's now at 44.3. So he's gained, or 43.4. He's gained 6.5 points over the course of that period. And as you mentioned, the entire time it's been in the Stormy Daniels onslaught. It has not only has it hurt his numbers have been ticking upward the entire time. And again, that's something that, and you see Democrats now, you talk to them, they're now somewhat annoyed by this, because you talk to Nancy Pelosi and others, they say, look, this is distracting from our message. They want to try and get back to reaching voters. And voters have actually tuned that out now and are paying attention to the other stuff, which Trump has had a pretty good few weeks.
Amazing. Their message. We don't have time for you to tell me what that is. But I appreciate it, Tom. Thank you.
You bet.
Well, as you just heard, the numbers on the upcoming midterm election are interesting. The Democrats are still ahead, but they're not nearly as popular as they were 6 months ago. And that is weird. The president is still disliked by half the country. Congressional Republicans in the polling are even less admired than he is. So Democrats ought to be way ahead. And as you just heard, they're not. So why is that? Could it be that for all the problems with the Republican Party, and those problems are real, Democrats are perceived as even less appealing? Looks that way. The question is why. We have some theories. We could show you a million examples to illustrate this, but here's one from just yesterday that came immediately to mind. Watch as this MSNBC panel, which is as close to a Democratic Party focus group as you'll ever find, gushes over that porn lawyer, the one whose eyes are too close together. You know, the one who's always on television making threats. Watch this.
Michael Avenatti's a beast.
Okay, that's true.
And
he's a beast.
He's a beast, and he keeps popping Donald Trump and all of his folks in the mouth. John Meacham says he may be the savior of the republic. It's really interesting.
He killed the news of the Iran deal practically in one big stroke. He really is a master of the media cycle. I owe Michael Avenatti an apology. For the last couple of weeks, I've been saying, enough already, Michael. I've seen you everywhere. What do you have left to say? I was wrong, brother. You have a lot to say. The Democrats could learn something from you. You are messing with Trump a lot more than they are.
So here's a political rule of thumb. If the creepy porn lawyer is, quote, the savior of the republic in your view, you're probably not trying very hard to appeal to middle America, and Democrats are not. In fact, in the last year and a half, the Democratic Party has doubled down on every behavior that got Trump elected in the first place. They routinely vilify tens of millions of Americans based on how they look. They prefer legal immigrants to U.S. citizens. At this point, they don't even hide that preference. They're open about it. In schools, in sports, and the military, they denounce the idea of biological differences between men and women. That's something that every culture from ancient Egypt till about 20 minutes ago understood perfectly well because it's demonstrable. They don't recognize it anymore. Then 2 nights ago, the New York Times criticized the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, in his trip to North Korea. They ran the headline, "At a key moment, Trump's top diplomat is again thousands of miles away," like it was a sin. But the purpose of his visit, you'll recall, was to secure the release of 3 American prisoners. But the Times was not impressed by that. Pompeo works for Trump, so the whole thing must be bad. Whatever else he's done, Trump has driven the Democratic Party off the deep end. They not only hate him, but the country that elected him, and it's starting to show in the polls. Christy Setzer is president of New Heights Communications. She's been in and around the Democratic Party for a long time, and she joins us tonight. So, I mean, you heard Tom Bevan say, you know, they're mad that their message isn't getting out. But the truth is their message is Trump is bad. And that's not really a message, right? That's more an animal reaction.
Whatever their message is, it's actually working. If you look at the congressional and state level elections that have happened since November 2016, Democrats have flipped 40-plus seats at the state legislative level, and often in districts where Trump actually won by 20 or 30 points. So we can quibble about what the message is, but we can't really quibble right now about whether or not it's working, because it clearly seems to be.
Well, I mean, of course, to some extent, I mean, Trump is still, like, loathed by half the population. It's his first midterm, so historically, of course they're going to pick up seats. The question is, where's the wave? And if you listen to what the message really is, one of the messages is, for example, that there are no differences between the sexes, that biological reality is, like, fake.
Nobody's saying that. I mean, no,
and we need to
seriously,
reorganize
they're not.
society along those lines. That's way more radical than anything Trump has ever said.
I would suggest that you point me to the candidate that is saying that and making that their real message. No, look, Democrats are being reasonable in the selection.
Would it be possible for a Democrat running for office in a Democratic primary to say there are 2 biological sexes, male and female, and that's it? That's what our biology tells. If you said that,
I would suggest they talk about the economy.
No. What do you mean? They're trying to reorganize. Are you joking? They're the ones pushing all these changes on the rest of us, including the bathroom thing and all of this. You couldn't say that in the Democratic Party. No, I'm serious.
It's Republicans who are doing the bathroom thing. Again, North Carolina. That was a entirely Republican
No one even imagined there were more than 2 sexes until about 20 minutes ago, and it was Democrats. So, but I'm just saying, that's a big change. Maybe biology isn't real, but that's not a mainstream position, and they spent a lot of time talking about it. Does that help?
I would say that if you wanted to make the argument to me that Democrats should or should not be talking about impeachment, they should or should not be spending a lot of time on Stormy Daniels and Michael Avenatti, we can have that conversation, and I would be happy to. But there is no mainstream Democratic candidate who is talking about, as you said, you know, the differences in biology.
You could say, as a Democrat, I'm serious, because I think it's reordering society is always a big deal. And pretending biology is fake is too. So you could have a Democratic candidate who would say there are 2 biological sexes. That's it. He could get away with that?
I don't think that they have been, is what I'm saying. And I think, again, if you look back to the ways that Democrats have been performing up to this point, whatever it is that they're doing is working. There is far more energy. There is more small dollar donations, and that leads into more volunteers, and it leads to a better slate of candidates in the Democratic side.
A lot of that is true. I think you're absolutely right. There's probably more energy, more money, and all that. I'm waiting for the wave. We'll see. I hope you'll come back election night.
Thank you.
Christy Setzer, thank you. Robert Mueller has bitten off a lot.